everybody. This is Rory Francis, and you're watching another episode of Igniting American Manufacturing. And I'm kind of laughing here. Been talking about robotics with folks for a while here, and I've got Andrew Cote with BRINC Drones, and you're out of Seattle currently. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yeah, that's correct. Great to be on today. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, we're going to have a lot of things to touch through. I'm going to jump right in. So you guys are kind of about end-to-end safety drones, and particularly in the law enforcement space. Correct statement there?
Yeah, absolutely. BRINC Drones was built and designed to send drones into situations that are too dangerous for a human being. I'm happy to talk about a founder, Blake Resnick, but we build next generation public safety technology here in America.
So let me ask you, and I read a little bit about Blake. He did this for a particular reason. There's a story behind or an incident that kind of was, the birth of this or the idea for this. Can you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The story of BRINC is absolutely centered around our founder, who's a brilliant young man. He was in college at the age of 14 and 15 at UNLV and at Northwestern. He's the youngest intern in the history of DJI, Tesla, and McLaren Automotive. And he's born and raised in Las Vegas, and he was at home when the 1 October shooting happened, the worst shooting in American history. And for those who are not familiar with that tragedy, it took law enforcement about 77 minutes to find the suspect and the shooter. And when law enforcement finally made entry onto the floor of his hotel at the Mandalay Bay, he took his own life because he had baby cameras pointing down the hallways. And again, Blake had friends and family who were at that concert. Thankfully, nobody was killed or injured, but still a traumatic experience. So Blake thought about that for a little bit and thought to himself, if law enforcement had had some type of drone, they probably could have found and located the shooter faster and saved more lives. So the dash two to this story is that after this, he starts to call the Vegas SWAT team and says, hey, I'm a young person. I've built this homemade drone. I think it could help you in your missions. And Vegas SWAT takes the meeting. They do this informal courtship. Blake starts going on call outs at the age of 18 with the Las Vegas SWAT team, flying missions for them to help them refine their assault and entry plans. And after this informal courtship, they said, yeah, we'd like to purchase one of your drones. And that's where the business plan really started and got going. But that's a little background and context for you, Rory.
Well, tragedy is tragedy, and no one wants to talk about it. But if anything good came out of it, it is this, and we can hopefully prevent this again. So it's a great mission and a great reason to start a company. So I was going to ask you where you get your drone pilots or how you skill them up, and actually you kind of answered it. It looks like we're training up some law enforcement people to implement it. True enough?
Yeah, absolutely. For those who are not familiar, there's about 18,000 police departments in America and 27,000 fire departments. And we view this as a fantastic market and a very underserved market, especially as we look back on the last 2 decades of the global war on terrorism. For those familiar with this, so many of our law enforcement entities across the country kind of received what we call DER mode equipment, or kind of hand-me-down equipment from the military, just given there was so much surplus of 2 decades of global war on terrorism. Put this in a little bit more context, right? There's a company called DJI, which is the world's largest producer of drones. It's headquartered in Shenzhen, China, and that entity has about 15,000 people working for them. We at BRINC Drones have about 100, 110 FTEs right now. And I'm happy to talk more about how this is just an exploding industry, whether from a business perspective or just the number of skilled laborers this industry is going to need, the number of pilots that are going to have to get certified from the FAA. It's a fantastic time for young people and also for other laborers who are looking to reskill themselves and enter a new exciting market to join the American uncrewed systems industry.
I'm very familiar with this sector. I actually have some drone pilots that are certified and licensed that work for me, and we actually are end user. And I had one gentleman that was upset that we couldn't use DJI drones in certain places near airports or near federal, and I had to explain to him, but you know what, you're probably a much better person to explain and so I'm going to go out here and tout that your product is made in America, correct?
Very, very proudly, yep, very much so.
Why do I want an American drone, and what's the risk about, I'm just going to say, having a Chinese or drone in our airspace. What's the advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'll give you a quick vignette. Like, imagine if older members of your family, let's think back to the Cold War and imagine if how we were battling the Soviet Union, and if our friends and family were utilizing, let's call it telephones or calculators or cars or other things that were made in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It's kind of an unfathomable thought, truly. And now we have DJI, which is backed by the CCP. They engage in anti-competitive pricing tactics in order to subsidize the market. It was a brilliant move by them. You have to commend them for it. But what we found after they flooded the zone, and again, control 85 to 90% of the global drone market, unfortunately, these amazing pieces of technology, we have to commend the technology. What we know is that their data is being transmitted back to China. And I have to be sensitive given that so much of this information and the exact engineering as to how this situation occurs and happens is still in a classified manner. But thematically, I hope people can infer and understand that this is what happened. So, and it was also very interesting, and this is on open source, you can Google this. Prior to the inauguration this year, DJI had a software that would what we call geofence, which means you can kind of draw a circle around sensitive areas as hospitals, airports, mass transit centers, et cetera. And the drone was not allowed to fly into those areas. Like, it was pre-programmed to avoid those areas for safety reasons. And again, prior to the inauguration, a software update removed that geofencing capability, which is kind of interesting. So let me pause there, and hopefully that answers some of your questions, Rory.
It does. At the end of the day, we have to be realists. We're work in a global economy, and we need to protect our industry first of all, and we need to be cognizant that there's security risks, particularly cybersecurity, and that we need to not be so naive, and we don't need to let any foreign national be flying over restricted space and gathering any kind of data. So I mean that's it, in the short term. So there's a lot of benefits. Building here in the U.S. is good for our workforce. It provides jobs, and when we create jobs in manufacturing, we create wealth for the nation as a whole. So that's good enough reason to be making these here. But when you add in supply chain and cybersecurity, it just makes it's common sense. Where are we physically training? Are you guys helping or writing curriculum or actually working with law enforcement on the training and the implementation part? Tell me. So I'm a police department from a small community, and I want some of your product and stuff. How do I go about training my people on that? Is that something you guys get involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of different ways that we can provide value to local law enforcement. Obviously, mainly through purchasing our product. We have a robust training pipeline. We have an excellent library of training videos for the customer as well. We also have a benevolent arm of our company called the Global Rescue Network. And that was, designed and built with the theme of, in the event of natural disasters, such as hurricane, floods, earthquakes, we will send pilots at no cost whatsoever to the local law enforcement to assist with search and rescue, either in urban or rural situations. But mainly for our customers, we provide very robust training and 24/7 customer support. Hopefully, Rory, we still have time, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about where I see the future of skilled laborers in manufacturing, and kind of where I would vector young people, but also older individuals as to where they can kind of insert themselves into this growing market.
Well, Andrew, I can't believe you just asked me talking about training and upskilling and workforce development. You don't know me that well. That could be about 5 segments, but please, I have strong opinions on it. I'm a strong advocate for it, but I would love to hear about your thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, great. You kind of leading me in a little bit there, but as I think about this issue and look at how explosive this market is going to be, both from a public safety perspective, but also the commercial markets as well. So let's talk about, federal law enforcement, military, commercial markets. Any smart young man or woman can very quickly design a Group 1 or Group 2 drone, so underneath 25 pounds, or even another type of uncrewed systems like an unmanned ground vehicle, like a robot. As you examine this issue, the core of it comes down to the critical components, and what those are the brushless motors, the PCBs, the flight controllers, the radios, etc. So much of which, and this is the theme about consumer electronics as a whole, so much of that is offshore, but it's imperative for reasons we discussed during this interview, for security, et cetera, and for our own economy, that we start to manufacture those items onshore. And let's look at Ukraine, for example. Everyone's seen the videos or read about what's happening with drones in Ukraine. Ukraine is building 2 million drones a year. I mean, given the drone companies we have that focus on Group 1 and Group 2 in America, I mean, maybe best case scenario, at our current production capability, America could maybe produce between 50 and 100,000 Group 1, Group 2 drones without involvement from the government. So any way you can get involved with cameras, with lenses, with radios, brushless motors, spinning that copper, think about all the different systems that attrit very quickly on a drone. If you can get smart on those, there are great employers out there who would love to hire you in order to bring that skill set in-house, so that we can really become completely and totally vertically integrated with 100% American-made products, which is all of our goals. It's good for the nation.
Well, Andrew, I need to put you in touch with a good friend of mine, Dennis Courtney. He runs the Robotic Drone League, and I actually got to go up to national champions in Johnson City. And they have kids from K through 12 competing in drone competitions, trying to foster that interest in engineering and technical industries, and learning how to fly drones and how to build them. At the high school level, these young people are given a box of parts, and they can go buy other parts, and they literally design their drone, they physically build it, they weld it, they do the programming, and they come out and compete. And Dennis does a great job. RDL is a great institution, and they're doing a lot with STEM. And that's what we need to do. We need to start, if we're going to be competitive here, and we're going to upskill and train, we need to start literally at the K-12 level, and we'll see that ROI down the road. But it's that important. The DoD actually, and JROTC was out at the event, and they see the need to foster that next generation. So I'm going to have to put you in touch with Dennis. He does a great job. Andrew, I'm going to close because we're kind of run out of time, but if anybody wants to find information about your organization, where should they go?
BrinkDrones.com. Love to hear from you. Got a great contact page. And again, in the event of natural disasters, things like this, and your community needs assistance, and you think that drones can provide value, please give us a call. We will be there as soon as we can. And Rory, it was a pleasure being on with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you. I wish we had more time. We could probably talk about this stuff all day, and I can embrace my inner geek. Thanks, Andrew. And this is Rory Francis, and you just watched another segment of Igniting American Manufacturing. We'll back at you soon.